Welcome. Look, AI is showing up everywhere, and it's happening fast. But all this new power, it brings a whole new world of risk. So the big question is, how do you get your team ready for the unique security challenges AI throws at us? Well, today we're going to build that essential foundation. Let's dive in. And just so you know where all of this is coming from, this explainer is from Chapter 1 of the tutorials AI Security Training Needs Assessment Framework. We're going straight to the source to figure out how to build a really solid security program from the ground up. So here's our game plan. First, we'll talk about the new security headaches AI creates. Then, we'll dig into why you absolutely need a formal assessment. We'll figure out who needs a seat at the table. And finally, we'll walk through the 5-phase framework that's basically your blueprint for action. Okay, first things first, let's face the problem head on. AI has completely changed the game for security. We're talking about a brand new landscape of risks, and a lot of them are kind of invisible to our old ways of doing things. And believe me, this isn't just an IT problem anymore. It's an everyone problem. I mean, think about it for a second. AI is already in your business, whether you officially put it there or not. It's probably in your payroll systems, your sales tools, you name it. But the real question is, are you actually ready for the new vulnerabilities that come along for the ride? And we're not talking about your typical computer viruses here. These risks are way sneakier. Imagine an employee pasting sensitive customer info into a public AI tool, or a sales team that follows a bogus AI forecast right off a cliff. These are brand new threats, like prompt injection, where someone can hide malicious commands in plain sight, or algorithmic bias that quietly leads your business to make terrible decisions. Your standard security training, it probably doesn't cover a single one of these. So with all these new threats flying around, where do you even start? Here's a hint. You don't just jump in and start creating training slides. Nope. You start with a strategic assessment. This is the critical groundwork that makes sure everything you do next is actually going to work. So what's the big payoff? Why do this? Well, a proper needs assessment isn't just busy work. For starters, it saves you money by making sure you're not wasting it on generic, useless training. It helps you zero in on the real security threats you're facing. It gives you the hard data you need to get your leadership team on board. And, super importantly, it sets up a baseline so you can actually prove that what you're doing is making a difference. And this is the main takeaway, really. The needs assessment is the foundation. If you don't build this solid base, any training you try to put on top of it is probably going to be wobbly, a waste of money, and it's just not going to protect you from some really serious threats. Now, this assessment is not a one-person show. You absolutely have to assemble the right team. Why? Because AI security is a team sport, plain and simple. You need people from every part of the company to see the whole picture. You know, it's kind of like putting together a giant puzzle. To really see all of your AI security risks, you have to bring together all these different people. Every single one of them is holding a piece of the puzzle that you just can't see from your own desk. First up, you need the C-suite. Your executive leadership is crucial. They're not just there to sign the checks. They make sure this whole project actually lines up with where the company is headed. Without their buy-in, you're pretty much dead in the water. Next, you bring in the department heads. Think of them as your strategists on the ground. They know exactly how their teams are using AI, what the day-to-day looks like, and where the real-world risks and frustrations are. Their input is pure gold. Of course, you need your tech experts. The IT and security folks live and breathe the infrastructure. They can spot system vulnerabilities from a mile away, explain the security you already have, and point out any technical roadblocks you're going to have to deal with. And finally, and you could argue this is the most important group, you need the end users, the employees who are actually in the trenches using these tools every single day. They're going to give you the unfiltered truth about how AI really gets used, what they're confused about, and the practical problems they run into. You just can't get that insight anywhere else. All right, so we've identified the problem, we've got our team together. Now let's talk about the solution. And it's a clearer 5-phase framework that really acts as your blueprint to tackle this whole complex challenge step by step. And what's so important here is that this isn't just a simple checklist. Each phase builds logically right on top of the last one. It all works together to create a really complete picture of what your organization actually needs. So here it is, the 5-phase blueprint. You start big with organizational analysis, basically mapping out your entire AI landscape. Then you zoom in with a job task analysis to see exactly what different people are doing with AI. With that knowledge, you do a risk assessment to find and prioritize the biggest threats. That lets you define the specific training needs, pinpointing exactly where the knowledge gaps are. And finally, you pull it all together in the scope definition, where you build the actual plan for your training program. And all of this brings us to the one question you really need to be asking yourself. The AI inside your organization is changing every single day. Is your security training actually keeping up, or is it falling dangerously behind? Thanks for tuning in.